Good morning. This is Talking Animals on WMNF. I'm Duncan Strauss. My guest today will be Glenn Hatchell, returning for the 14th installment of Ask the Trainer. That means as of this morning, we're approaching 14 instances over the years of inviting listeners to call in with questions for Glenn about their dogs or cats' behavior. Questions about other animals are, of course, welcome too. If you've heard previous editions of Ask the Trainer, which we aim to present every 2 to 3 months, you'll recall that Glenn served as the Behavior and Enrichment Manager at the Humane Society of Tampa Bay. He's retired from that position, and he's also, of course, an accomplished dog trainer and behaviorist. He's also a former WMNF programmer. During Ask the Trainer shows, Glenn fields several calls and emails seeking to answer listener questions about their animal's behavior and or provide guidance on training or how to otherwise address that particular issue. So this morning, we again invite listeners to call in 813-239-9663 with questions for Glenn, or the questions can be submitted by email, dj@wmnf.org, or via text, 813-433-0885. Incidentally, we've learned that phone calls in this case tend to be most effective because they enable Glenn to ask the caller follow-up questions, more precisely assessing the situation and better sort of calibrating his recommended solution. Still, for listeners unable to call or who just prefer to write in, we also incorporate questions, again submitted by email at dj@wmnf.org or text 813-433-0885. So feel free to call or email now while Glenn and I talk for a few minutes. And first of all, Glenn, welcome back to Talking Animals / Ask the Trainer.
Thank you, sir. It's good to be back.
Good to see you. And so we often have
that last story in the news that was talking about the Gifford fire. And I believe the Gifford fires in California, I didn't expect to be talking about this, but last night I read that they've been able, last night I read that they found the start, or what they believe was the beginning of the fire in the Gifford fire, which I think now is at a large number of acres. But it was that what they found was a charred fish down in the yard. This isn't a joke. This isn't heading somewhere. And and it's pretty far inland, I believe, where this is. And what they believe is that a tired osprey that was flying with this fish it had caught, ended up dropping the fish. It hit the power lines, 2 of the power lines, and that created the sparks that hit the ground on this very dry ground.
Wow.
And that sparked the fire.
What an incredible scenario that they've pieced together.
Yeah, when she said that, exactly. Not only is it oh my gosh, it ties right into, well, this is an animal show, it would fit there. But that in itself, how they can determine where a fire began and how it started is just still blows my mind.
Yeah, arson investigation is obviously an incredibly sophisticated science at this point, and that's a perfect example.
Yeah, exactly. But I guess in anything, when you look at it, it's like, well, what doesn't belong here? A charred fish to begin with. How did that fish get so far inland? But yeah, I just found that absolutely fascinating. Good morning, Duncan.
Good morning, Glenn.
What a story to start with.
That is a good story to start with. And we typically also start with some sort of thought that you've had or observation that you've made, either with recent experiences helping animals out in the field or otherwise, or things that have just occurred to you because you've seen a number of instances of certain things happening. So if there's something that we should sort of ease into, I suspect that we always have something pretty good to sort of launch us in this direction.
Always.
And then we'll take calls, of course, at 813-239-9663. Emails can come in through dj@wmnf.org or text 813-433-0885. So again, this is today's new edition of Ask the Trainer with Glenn Hatchell. And so you can call or email or text using those methods if you'd like to pose a question about your dog or cat's behavior or some training issue or anything else that you think Glenn could help address. So what's most foremost on your mind?
Well, I've been thinking about this the last few days because in the since we started this, I believe when we started this, I was at the Humane Society. So every week, or not every week, but every 3 months or so when we would do this show, I always came in and knew what I wanted to talk about because it would relate to the problems that I was helping people deal with their animals.
Yeah.
And I always thought, one of my questions was always, is this a bubble or is this a trend? We don't know. But being able to come on and talk about training and such, it fit to some of the current problems that we were seeing, at least there at the shelter. So over the last year or so, last year and a half since I have left the shelter, the Humane Society, it's been different to come up with a topic. There have been some things that absolutely popped right up, and today I kept thinking about what we wanted to talk, what this theme would be, what the conceit would be through the show.
Sure.
And what I got thinking about is that I always start thinking about fundamentals. I always start thinking about the basics. And even more so because now that I've left the Humane Society, I am usually about once a month, I go off and help the ASPCA at one of their locations. And if you're interested in volunteering with the ASPCA, you can go to their website, aspca.org, and search on volunteer and find ways to do that. So I've been able to keep my hands on some dogs and such, but those are in different situations, not an adoption agency situation, which was, or environment, which it was at the Humane Society. So, and then I got thinking about all the heat and the hydration and things like that. And then I was thinking, as the speaker reaches for a bottle of water.
Right.
But I thought we are going to talk about that because you can't be with somebody around someone in Florida right now and not talk about the heat.
For sure. It started earlier and seems more pronounced this summer.
Well, and you've lived here for a long period of time. I would say, again, this is anecdotally, but I've lived here. I've lived here for decades and decades and decades, and it is consistently 5 to 6 degrees warmer every day than it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago.
X amount of years ago.
Yep.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's off on another tangent. But that is something that a lot of people are dealing with right now, not only in the shelters, but not everybody has air conditioning, and not all dogs have access to be in the air conditioning all day long. So we are going to talk about that through the show today.
Okay.
But then I got thinking about this morning about cats, because I'm always thinking about cats, especially when I was feeding mine, and the number of owners who, or the percentage of cats who never have a vet visit. And there's some statistics that are published, and it's surprisingly low. But I think it's like a quarter or something like that, to give you an idea, to put it in a reference, put it in a frame somewhere along that line. But then I got thinking about, what about percentage of dog owners who go through a group training class or have private lessons? That is probably minuscule. Really, when I think that was one of the questions that I would ask frequently, have you gone through any sort of training before? And usually the answer was no. So that's when I decided maybe what the idea would be today, that if somebody who's never gone to a training class, never worked with a trainer, but they've got a dog in their home, and I'm going to keep this dog focused because it's easier to do that.
Sure.
Of what would you recommend to him? Never been to a training class. Obviously, they might have access. Yeah. What would what would be the tip? What would be the one tip that you would give them? So, as I thought through that, I thought, if I was posing this question to Karen Pleschia and Mariah Shesky, who have joined me here on Talking Animals
Sure,
before.
multiple
I've
times,
sat in for you. Their answer would be different than what I come up with.
Sure.
But their reasons for it would be just as, you would be just as fully invested with it as what I may say. So as I talk about different things here, I'm not saying this is the way. It's just one way. This is how I would approach it. These are the things that I would think about. So
and maybe we'll sort of lace this throughout the conversation, because we can take a call now, and that may spin us in the direction that you have in mind. And so I think we've got, if I'm not mistaken, we got. I guess this isn't working.
I still can't get over the Gifford fire, but really check that out if you are listening about the way that started.
Sarah?
Yes, hello.
Oh, hi, Sarah. Sarah from Bradenton, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Okay, great. You're on Talking Animals. It's Ask the Trainer with Glenn Hatchell. So tell us why you're calling today.
Awesome. So I'll give you a little backstory on my pup. So we have a rescue from a very tough abuse hoarder situation. He lived in one room with 70 dogs, windows boarded up, was born in the room, never saw the sun. Really rough life. And I'm trying to figure out, we've had him a year and a half. He's come so far. He's opened up, but he's so skittish around other dogs because they were legitimately standing on each other in this home he was in. And I'm just trying to see if there's any advice on the best way to introduce him to dogs, because I don't want him to be so freaked out on walks and things of that nature. And he just has so much trauma. I just don't know the best approach.
How old is he now?
He's approximately 6.
Okay.
He was born in that house to our knowledge, and he lived in there 4 years. He was with a foster for a bit. We've had him about a year and a half.
Okay. Are there other things he shows fears to?
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's afraid of most things.
Okay. Yep. And that's so... the best, at least, well, and again, this is my perspective of looking at it. There are things you can do that could mitigate. Well, I'm sorry. Let me ask another question, because you were talking about wanting to help him with that, but then you said something about on a walk. Is that where the biggest issue happens?
Yeah, because that's generally the only time he has any interaction with other dogs. Mm-hmm. We've got him accustomed to where he's not as afraid of people anymore. Mm-hmm. I just like to walk the neighborhood. Yeah, it's a big win.
Yeah.
He used to just hide the entire day, even from us at home. So, but yeah, we walk around the neighborhood. I try to get him used to being around other people and dogs, and he just gets so afraid, and I'm afraid one day he's going to somehow get free and run.
Mm-hmm. So what does he do when he gets afraid? Does he start pulling?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
He backs up and he just cowers quite a bit and just tries really hard, locks his feet into the ground to not move, essentially.
Mm-hmm. And where would the other dog be at this point?
Generally just nearby. I usually, most people are pretty respectful. Mm-hmm. I'll just say, hey, can we get some space? But I would like to see if they could introduce themselves. But every now and then we get a rogue one that kind of runs at him, which I know is just going to be an adverse reaction regardless. Right.
My first recommendation is I would only do... I'm sorry, I forgot to ask his name. I almost called him Sarah a second ago, but that's your name.
His name is Cowboy.
Cowboy. If Cowboy shows some movement towards the other dog, would I pursue trying to do an introduction?
Okay.
And part of it is what you really want. I mean, the ideal thing is for him to make the decision of when to do the introduction, and that lets him do it. Now, the reality is he's not going to. You and I both know that. I mean, I'm assuming that he's not. Has there ever been a dog that he's gone up and been okay to meet?
Yes, we have had probably, I want to say 2 or 3 in the last year and a half.
Okay. Okay.
And some were big, some were small, so it wasn't like a certain kind of dog.
Pure energy.
Went up and just kind of smelled their face, essentially.
Perfect. And I would see, if he shows if he shows signs to want to do that, I would let him. And if he's, looks like it's one of those to where he wants to cower and move away, then I would let him move away. And there's a couple of reasons for this. It's basically, I think what you're looking for in this case, based on his age and what he went through, is just to make it easier on him versus as scary as it is now.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, all right. So that's, I think, from the greeting aspect is the one thing that I could recommend there, or, that comes to mind. There are, I don't know if you have a vet involved with any medications and such, and I'm not medically trained. All I'm going to say is there are a number of things that a vet could provide that could assist in this, but medicine alone doesn't fix it. You still got to go through to help him have those experiences that's going to change his reaction to it. And at his age and for the length of time he was in that environment, I have to believe that there are just certain brain patterns that you can soften them, but they're there and he's not going to come out of it.
And that's kind of where we're at too. We thought, but we're just trying to figure out.
Oh yeah. And
also going blind. So
okay, well, and and actually from a greeting aspect, that could be a big factor as well.
Yeah.
Obviously, nose is still the biggest factor, but it's going to be something that puts him at a disadvantage. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know exactly how he's going to react about that, but, it's another one of those observations. But there are some of the things that you could try. I don't know if you've ever tried a thunder shirt. Are you familiar with a thunder shirt?
Yes, I have. It's just, he's like you were talking about at the beginning of the show, he's a kind of like a chow mix. Mm-hmm. He has so much hair, and it's so hot.
Yep. Well, no. Absolutely. So that is a big factor there. So a couple of things, though. The more recent ones, I know early on they were pretty thick, but the ones that they have now are much more breathable. But all we're talking about here, though, so when you go out for a walk, generally, how long are you out with him on leash?
We don't do anything too long, especially this time of year. We usually just go around a block or two.
Yep.
Just to try to familiarize him with being outside.
Yep. And that's the only length of time we're talking about a thunder shirt being on.
Yeah.
Only during the walk. So, and obviously if there were any signs that it's like, oh, he is heating up quickly, or I guess if he also has a tendency to heat up quickly, that would absolutely be a concern there. But that would be now. Anecdotally, I have seen, that seems to be the word of the day. Anecdotally, I have seen a lot of success with thunder shirts on dogs with fears, but there's also a range to where the amount of fears he's showing, the thunder shirt, I would be surprised if it was. My instinct says that I would be surprised if there was enough of influence from the thunder shirt to make it worth it.
Right.
But again, that's just thinking solely based on his environment in the early years and what you're dealing with a year and a half later.
Right.
Because And a lot of people would think, well, why a thunder shirt? Sorry, let me go back to that. A thunder shirt has a calming effect on most dogs. Basically, think of it like a hug, but there's some nerve stuff, and there's things that happen when the thunder shirt goes on, and that squeeze happens. And if you really want to read about it, Temple Grandin talks about it with her squeeze. Her squeeze box. Yeah, the squeeze box. Yeah. Exactly. Which I think there may be a link to how that all came along. But yet another tangent. But there are some other over-the-counter kind of things that people have tried. There are there's no one thing that I could say, ooh, give this a try. But I know people who have used like Benadryl, because the Benadryl has a drowsy effect on a dog. But I wouldn't necessarily do that on a walk, because you don't want them falling asleep. So, but thinking about the thunder shirt, it is on a short period of time, and who knows? It may be just enough. That's one thing I always said was, well, here's what I feel, but we're not going to know until we try it.
Exactly.
And so many times I was wrong. Usually the dogs would prove me wrong about 5 times a day. But that is really why it's like, let's try it. I don't think so. But that is something that there's no side effects. There's no negative side effects.
No downside, really, right, to trying it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. There's nothing that's like, oh, that set us back, and now we've got to, undo something and trying to address the fear. Yeah. We don't want to do anything to increase any fear, especially in a fearful dog.
Yeah.
All right,
okay,
Sarah.
Cool. I'll look into those. Thank you.
All right, thanks for calling.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you so much.
So this is Talking Animals. We're in the current edition of Ask the trainer being, of course, Glenn Hatchell, on Talking Animals on WNF. If you have a question about your dog or cat's behavior, or maybe a training issue, Glenn is welcoming those questions right now at 813-239-9663, by email at dj@wnf.org, or via text at 813-433-0885. And we have another caller here, and also just going to quickly say, earlier after you commented on that news story, one of our emailers wrote in saying, my friend went out to check a solar panel leak and found a bass had been dropped, causing the leak to the solar panel. So no warranty, but similar situation to what you described as far as the cause of the fire.
Wow.
Yeah. So, okay, let's continue now with...
I'm going to start sitting out in my backyard with my fishing rod.
There you go. That's the answers.
Listening
Cheryl?
to WNF.
Are you there, Cheryl?
Yeah, hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're on Talking Animals. It's As a Trainer with Glenn Hatchell. What brings your call in today?
Awesome. Yeah, and I did hear about the fish in the Gifford fire, so that was a cool story. So I have one remaining issue with a dog. I rescued him from an SPCA when he was 1 year old. His name is Jed, and he is a red tick coonhound's pit bull mix. And they found him running down the side of the road in Central Florida, and my hunch, and my trainer's hunch at the time, was that he had probably never been in a house, kind of kept in a kennel, wasn't a pet, was like, being raised as a hunting dog. So this guy comes into my hands, and he is a disaster. Bringing him into the house, horrible. I hired one trainer, got through some things. A year later, I was having other issues. I hired a behavior modification trainer who really took us a long, long way. And I have one thing left that I cannot seem to break, and that is he weighs 75 pounds, so this is not a small dog. Mm-hmm. Whenever anyone comes over, and he's even started doing it to the pool guy, he's 3.5 now. He started doing it to the pool cleaner, started doing it to my yard guy yesterday. He just jumps up on them like paws on the back, and will start humping and nipping at their clothes. And for the life of me, I usually just grab them and just get them out of the situation. But how do I break him of this crazy thing?
Well, here's the challenge to answer that is that there's a lot to unravel. Has he always done this?
No, he started doing it probably when he was about 2.5, so like a year ago.
Okay. And same place. You just live in the same place, and
Yep.
None of that's changed.
Nope.
So my first thought always, is anytime we're looking, we start looking at a problem, how we're going to address it. Pardon me a moment. Oh, that was louder than I expected there. Is we don't want the dog to be able to repeat the problem behavior. We want to be able to eliminate their ability to do it at all. Now, so what that says is that if the pool guy's coming over or the lawn guy's coming over, you want to have him on a leash before that. So he can't get to them. And then, assuming that at that point you can get one of those guys or have come close to him now, and you've got Jed, then start teaching an introduction routine with Jed and the other people, like having him sit, something like that. So that's what pops in my mind initially. What do you think about that? Have you tried something like that?
Well, I tried something like that. So there was someone coming over they was doing just an inspection on my HVAC system to make sure it was working fine. And the guy, what I did is I put Jed on a leash, and had the guy come in the door, and I was standing across the room with Jed on a leash, and he literally, his 75 pounds, he pulled me across the room to get to the guy. Yep. And I couldn't hold him. I mean, I can hold him if he had his harness on, but anyway, so generally what I do is, again, I put him, so he can see, but I put him in a place where he can no longer have access. Mm-hmm. And the problem is he's already started the behavior.
Right. Well, and that's you just touched on one of the reasons why there's so many layers to this. Because it really is. He started it at that point. So that's what we, ultimately want to work back to. But again, there's some scenarios here. Like you said, because or what you described there of him pulling you across the room, I mean, that's real world. That's what happens, especially if there's a little bit of slack in that leash and they get that pull.
It's always been a very overreactive dog, which has been part of the problem.
Yeah. Well, I will say it comes back to fundamentals. And often I could tell you a few things to do along this line, but there's a lot that's feeding into it. And the issue, I think, is earlier than him jumping on the guy's back, for example.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't say the issue. The training needs to happen earlier than that, of getting him to basically respond to you rather than heading to the trainer. Yeah. And so often it comes back to, let's start with focusing on the fundamentals. So I would absolutely start back, since you have gone through a couple of trainings. You probably went through the basic about getting the sit, walking around, getting the stay, getting some distance. I would absolutely go back and start getting him top notch on his basic manners, as if he was about to go through some certification test evaluation.
Okay.
Right. Because what's going to happen through this, especially, I think, one with the pity focus, hoping that he has that pity focus, and I would say also the attention that a coonhound would give you if you've got the right smell. That probably you can't, that way he's going to want to, I'm guessing there's going to be motivation for Jed wanting to pay attention to you.
Food.
In those, but if that's what takes it to get him learning what to do. So let's say that it is food to begin with, and kibble, if he goes for the dry kibble, at the beginning, as he learns not to jump on the guy's back, he's going to be getting a lot of kibble. And what you want to progress to over the time, that he learns that he gets the kibble from the guy after he sat in front of him.
Yeah, right. And that has worked. That the couple people that I, like my regular handyman, he'll come to the door and I will give him a handful of treats. And then I'll let, Jed into the room. And
so start getting Jed to understand the process, the routine that's happening there, and then try to involve the people who come regularly to do the same thing. Yep.
Okay.
That would be one way to go about it, based on what you've done, and again, based on the reality of what you're dealing with there. So hopefully that will help.
Yeah, all right, Cheryl.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for your call. So we're going to move on to Michael, who's been holding a good long while. Michael?
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, good. Thanks for your patience in holding there. You're on the Talking Animals show with today's edition, of course, being Ask the Trainer, and that trainer being Glenn Hatchell. So what brings in your call today?
Well, I got a good one for you. I have a 6-year-old deerhead Chihuahua, and I just recently rescued out of the, I guess it's now Gulf of America, a 10-month-old Australian Shepherd. My problem is my deerhead Chihuahua, very aggressive on a leash, around other dogs, loses her mind, even if a dog comes on TV. Off leash, not a problem. On leash, it's like my fiance can't control her, spins in circles, and I noticed that the my shepherd, the newest addition to the family, started following that behavior, but I just snapped and submitted her, and now it's voice command. She doesn't even do it anymore. It's just, that came as fast, it went as fast as it occurred. But the deerhead, which is 6-year-old Penny, sweet dog, except on leash. It's like, I had to make a determination if she's in protect mode of either myself or my wife, which was not the case. And so I'm kind of at a loss on what I do is I submit her on the ground. And it is like, a battle royal with a 10-pound deerhead Chihuahua that has absolutely lost her mind. I walk away about, 10 feet away. She calms down. She goes into submissive, calm state. Once the energy, is released, I can walk her until she sees a dog and a golf cart. Now, I am the third owner of this dog. She was brought back to the shelter 3 times, and I'm like, no, we're taking the dog and working with her. Other than that, there was only one food aggression, and that was, basically our fault. But we cured the food aggression, so we have no food aggression. We don't have any other behavioral issues with this dog, other than the going absolutely berserk. It's like flying a kite, and it's out of control. She's just doing.
What area do you live?
I live over in Clearwater, Palm Harbor. Now, when I walk her, we usually walk both of them. And when she starts, I noticed that my shepherd, which is, I think she's now going to be 11 months old, starts going after her, but not in an aggressive way, just, put her in a place, if you will.
Yeah, I would. There's some stuff going on between them, and especially with the shepherd at that age and such that what you described right there. I would absolutely recommend looking at website ccpdt.org and selecting a trainer from that website there. Yeah, there's some things going on there that not only you want to be able to address, but what you were describing of what you were doing with the Chihuahua probably or is a good chance is also adding into and exacerbating the problem some. So I think
that was my next thought. If I'm adding to the tension level, but I stay calm. When I correct her, and this has been going on for years, way before the shepherd came into play. They're best buddies.
Yeah.
But it's like if she sees a dog on TV, it's like, boop.
Yep. Well, and also sounds like something to talk to the vet about because, and the reason is because it goes from fine to extreme. There's no ramp up. It's an immediate switch flip.
Yep.
And that's something that is why I would absolutely talk to the vet about it as well.
Okay. Yeah, because it's weird. Like I said, if I'm sitting on the front lanai, she'll, on my lap, and she'll see a dog, she'll start building. She'll slowly build up there, and I just calm her, put my hand over her face, and say, "No, stop, be quiet. Stop it. If it gets out of hand, I put her in the house." But on leash walking, nope. It's like, okay, and I'm not going to not walk her.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm just going. Yeah, I walked about a mile with them.
All right. Well, good luck.
They love it.
All right, Michael. Thank you very much. Good luck.
Thank you. All right.
Bye-bye. So this is Talking Animals. This is Ask the Trainer. The trainer, of course, is Glenn Hatchell. And you can get in on this by calling 813-239-9663 if you have any questions about your dog's or cat's behavior or training issue. You can also email dj@wmnf.org or text 813-433-0885. We have an email we're going to read, actually international email we're going to read shortly. Just want to quickly say my guest next week will be Elaine West, founder of Rooterville Animal Sanctuary, a haven located in Melrose, Florida, housing about 300 rescued farm animals, predominantly pigs. Spoke with Elaine about 7 years ago, so this seemed like a good moment for an update on Rooterville and how the pigs are doing. So that's next Wednesday, Wednesday the 13th, here on Talking Animals on WMNF. More immediately, I'll be back on the air later today on WMNF, sitting in for Nancy C. on the traffic jam from 3 to 6 p.m., the first music show I've done in more than 3 years, so not exactly overconfident, Glenn, but we'll see how it goes. And so you're welcome to join me back here at 3 for that.
It's like riding a bike.
All right, well, there you go. Let's hope. So,
but I got to say, Rooterville, what a brilliant name.
Isn't that great?
Oh, my God.
That alone, I thought, almost merited a follow-up interview. So, all right, so let's get into this international email that came in, and then we've got a couple callers holding, so we'll get to them as soon as we possibly can. So this email says, I have a question for Glenn regarding our 7-year-old golden retriever, Jake, and his anxiety in the car. Jake has never been particularly comfortable in the car, but over the past year, his anxiety has noticeably increased. As soon as he realizes we're going on a car ride, he begins panting heavily and doesn't stop until he's out of the vehicle. On a recent trip from Toronto to Montreal, the anxiety was especially intense. We had to make frequent stops to walk him and give him water, which helped temporarily. However, as soon as we were back in the car, he resumed panting, remained standing, the entire time, and leaned against the back seat. He refuses to sit or lie down during car rides. Do you have any advice or suggestions that might help Jake feel more at ease during travel? Thank you. Karen, that's from Karen.
All right. Well, that is thinking about the fearful dog that was fearful of other dogs on the walk. Where are those notes? And it's Sarah's. I think it was Sarah's dog. Excuse me. Several of those same recommendations, I think, I would recommend here. The good thing that I hear out of that email is the dog, excuse me. The good thing I hear about that email is that when they go outside, or the dog gets outside, gets out of the car, it sounds like he quickly calms down. And I say that based on the fact that the panting resumes when he jumps back in. So that's good that it narrows, or we could kind of say that it focuses it onto being in the car versus the trip necessarily. And I think, well, by that, I mean, if you were on a long trip and you stopped to let him out for a little bit, if the dog knew that you were getting back in the car and he didn't like traveling, there's a good chance he would continue to pant and do those kinds of things. So it does sound like that he recovers, which is definitely a positive there. You're doing the right things as far as the increased stops, because since the dogs can't tell us what's happening with them, if there are signs of stress, as the ones you described of the panting and such, having those stops is good because it gives him the break, and we don't know for sure if anything's happening. But this feels like, to me, it could once again be at a level to where a thunder shirt could very well be effective, because a thunder shirt is going to help calm the dog down. And I came across this just using the thunder shirt, and when I started, and I'm not doing, and sorry, I should say a calming shirt rather than necessarily giving a given a brand name, because I'm not endorsing one specific one at all. It's just that's the one that I used early on and was the first one that was readily available. But what I realized is they gave a calming effect that dogs could use in any sort of situation to where they were a little heightened with what I would describe for myself as anxiety. If I'm going into a new situation, I'm going to have a little bit of heightened anxiety because of the unknown. And I'm thinking that the thunder shirt could possibly help him during the times that he's in the car going on the ride. Some of the things that could be affecting it could be the movement. It could be the volume. It could be the noise. Could be the vibration. I know cats are very susceptible to vibrations, but I've never read that dogs are. But I have to believe that they are. And part of it is just seeing their reactions when a big truck comes by or a train or something like that. But again, there's also some over-the-counter kind of things in what's being described here that I think could be that may fit for this dog, because it's not excessive. It doesn't sound like it's excessive because they are able to do the stops. He recovers. It just starts again when they get back in the car. So any other thoughts? I don't know if there's...
No, I think that, I guess the only question, it sounded like it is that the anxiety has increased over the years, so it sounds like probably your over-the-counter things probably would hope
could be
mitigate that.
Yep.
Right?
And, leaning against the back seat, there's probably some reason for that. I mean, there's a function, and I've got to believe that the dog's doing that, but who knows why. But it also is one of those things that we can observe and notice. Well, he's leaning into it versus lying down or just standing there. But it doesn't sound extreme, which is definitely a positive, Karen. Hope that helps.
Okay, cool. Let's move on now to Joe, who's been waiting ever so patiently. Joe, are you there?
Yep, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, Joe from St. Pete. You're on Talking Animals with Ask the Trainer with Glenn Hatchell. So,
Great, thank you.
Thank
you. I
you.
wanted to ask about an issue that we're experiencing. We have two dogs. We have an 8-month-old puppy in the house and then a 4 to 5-year-old adult. And I think there's sort of an overstimulation or overexcitement thing happening here when we are moving to go for a walk or, go on any kind of outing at all. The old dog in particular, but now it's kind of rubbing off on the puppy, they just get so excited, running in circles, jumping on furniture, jumping on people, just any evidence of the leash or any evidence that we might be about to leave the house. We've tried all kinds of things like being calm and treating them for, waiting patiently and stuff, and we're just not having any luck with that. So we're wondering if you had any ideas on how to sort of help calm the situation in that regard.
Has the adult dog always been like this when the leash comes out?
Yeah, he's always been like it a little bit. He was actually the younger. We typically have two dogs at a time. Our older dog died about a year and a half ago. when it was him and her, the older dog that's no longer with us was much calmer, and it really wasn't much of a problem. He would get excited, but he wasn't going crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Now that we had him on his own for about a year, now that we have a puppy, it's really escalated.
All right. So you're still there, right, Joe?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So when you, so I tell me about your feeding routine when you go. The dog's feeding routines.
Sure. When they eat together. They each have their own bowl. We have the bowl, the slow feeding bowls, with like the bumps or whatever in them. They eat next to each other. We have them wait after we put the food in or before we're putting the food in. They'll wait patiently until they're released to go to their bowl. And they'll wait for minutes at a time if we want them to. We don't usually make them wait that long, but they're really well trained in that respect and don't get overly excited. They're excited to eat, of course, but they're not doing the same behavior. It's really very focused on if it looks like we're going for a walk or taking them, for a ride in the car. They just kind of go nuts.
Okay. But so here's where my thinking is going. And of course, not being with you, I can't necessarily give specifics, but think about it this way. At feeding time, they're doing exactly what you want them to do at leashing time. So since they will sit there, as you said, for minutes at a time, start thinking about how you can incorporate getting the leash and such on them while they're waiting for the food. Now, thinking through the details right now, I'm not going to try to give you a step-by-step because I don't know what your current steps are. But the idea being, again, they're going to get fed and they're willing to do anything for it. Now, there's going to be conflict right here. So, I'm sorry, conflict is the wrong term to use. I was thinking conflict in their brain about, I want to do this, but I really want to do this. So the way I think you could approach that is, one, I think you'll have to work on each of them separately, obviously doing this, but feed them, let's say, I'm just going to use 1 cup as an example because it's easy for me to do that math. Let's say instead of 1 cup at a time, what they're going to get, you're actually going to feed in that feeding time like a 1/4 cup each. But what you're going to do is use that 1/4 cup to get them to sit while you're putting on the leash. Now, this is not going to happen overnight by any means, but that's the first thing that comes to mind of ways to address this. Because what ideally you do want them to do is sit there while you put the leash on them.
Right.
And since they're going so nuts right there, but they'll do it at the food bowl, then it's like, okay, let's bring them together and incorporating a training routine into the feeding time.
That makes sense. Do you think it would even be appropriate, like let's say midday when they're not eating anyway, but maybe kind of let them think they are, give them a little bit out of the main food basically as a treat, and always just start to establish a routine of putting their leash on in the feeding space? That's essentially what you're saying, right? Rather than at the front door or wherever.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, I wasn't even thinking about things from a space aspect. I was thinking of it more of them being focused on something other than the leash to where, so instead of being, but it could be really the space. What we want to get to is the space doesn't matter. Ultimately, we want to get to where the space they are doesn't matter, because if they see the leash is coming, what they should do is sit in front of you to be leashed wherever you happen to be.
Right.
Yeah, so really it was the idea of the leash is using the food as the reward for, if you sit here and let me leash you, then I'm going to let you have this 1/4 cup of food.
Gotcha.
But you could also, what I thought you were maybe going through that there, though, is that even through the day, as you're working on them getting used to sitting for it, go ahead and use a little bit of their kibble as a reward for them. Ultimately, what you want is that they're going to be excited because when they come back from the walk is when they would get the reward. It's just that right now we've got to throw in some bonus money for it, some bonus treats for them while we're getting them on board with what we want them to do.
Got it. Okay.
All right, Joe. Thanks so much for your call. Good luck.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we're in our home stretch here of our edition of Ask the Trainer with Glenn Hatchell. I'm going to try to put on one more call. Rick here has been waiting very patiently, so we might only have a couple minutes, Glenn, for this call, this conversation, but let's give it a whirl.
All right.
Okay, Rick, hi. You're on the air with Glenn Hatchell for Ask the Trainer.
Hi, guys. Thanks for taking the call.
For sure.
We adopted Charlie, a 32-pound mutt with corgi in him, 4 years ago. He's 11 this month. He was prescribed by Pinellas County Animal Shelter Prozac and Trazodone, which he takes twice a day. He is still extremely manic, and the one trait we're trying to cure is that he barks at me aggressively every time I change rooms or go to an exterior door.
But he just barks. He doesn't charge?
Well, he charges, but he doesn't lunge. In other words, he charges and blocks my path and then barks loudly and aggressively. And one of the problems with Charlie is when he barks, his mouth closes. He's got a good-sized head. And, I mean, one day he accidentally ripped the tail off of the front of my shirt. He doesn't do this to Terry. He doesn't bark at people that come here, although he's overly aggressive at being affectionate. We have to put a leash on him and hold him down.
Is he food motivated?
He loves treats.
But I mean, even like when you go to feed him his meal, does he chomp it down pretty fast?
No, he has a bowl of kibble.
Okay,
and he has a bowl of kibble that he wanders over to 2 or 3 times a day and eats pieces individually.
Okay. What about toys? Does he like to chase? Is there a toy he likes to chase?
He's got one rawhide wishbone that he doesn't chase, but he'll chew on it. When we have a 97-year-old gal that spends one day a week with us, and while her daughter's at work, and Charlie guards her, but we give him a Nerf football full of little medium-sized milk.
Now, he only does this to you, right?
He only barks like this to me.
Okay. So my thought, because we've got to wrap this up here, the reason why I ask about the toys or food or something like that is that as you move from room to room, try to toss him something that he would really get excited about. For some dogs, it's a toy. Some dogs, it's a treat. But it sounds like since he's on meds, the vet is the best place to start.
Okay. Yeah.
Humor's fine.
Yeah, we And by the way, we went on a road trip to Mobile to escape Hurricane Milton last fall, and he was...
Okay, Rick, I'm so sorry. We're just about out of time, but good luck with that. Well,
we appreciate you guys.
Thanks so much. Thanks for listening. Thanks for calling. Good luck. All right, we're at the tail end of our edition of Ask the Trainer here on Talking Animals. Coming up on WNF, it's The Conversation, the great show hosted by Mario Nunez and Joe King Carter. After that, it's The Scoop, WNF's brief news recap. Then we shift back to music programming with Sam Wall holding forth from 1 to 3, followed by me, good Lord, sitting in for Nancy C., hosting the Wednesday Traffic Jam from 3 to 6.
David Byrne.
A good chance. At which point, it's John DeBrule and Harry with Sound Safari, followed by the Step Outside guys from 8 to 10 p.m. And more great music beyond on WMNF Tampa here. So we do this every 2 to 3 months, so keep an eye out for the next one. And I think it's wise for some people to send in their question in advance. WMNF Tampa.